Hey everyone, welcome to this week's conversation with Dr. Stephen Nedd about the body and how to fix, protect, or maintain it using outside-the-box alternative solutions. If you're a big fan of the pharmaceutical or surgical approach, you are so in the wrong place, because on this podcast, we're not going to be pushing the conventional medicine methods or way of thinking about health. If you're looking for another way to live longer and healthier, join me, Ron Nedd, and my brother, Dr. Stephen Nedd, for this week's body chat about carpal tunnel, the traffic jam in your wrist. Me? I'm a retired Twin Cities chiropractor currently helping people buy and sell homes in the Tampa Bay and Los Angeles areas. My brother has a thriving chiropractic practice in the Clearwater area of Tampa Bay, Florida. In this podcast, we're going to chat about all sorts of topics related to health, nutrition, exercise, just about everything having to do with the body. You're invited to listen in to our body chat, but don't forget that neither of us is giving you health advice, so don't rush off to do something without either checking with your doctor first or seeing Dr. Stephen Nedd as a patient at his office. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, brother.
How are things in Florida? Has it been raining lately?
No, it's been beautiful, about high 70s and clear.
Excellent. All right, so if anybody wants to move down there that's listening to this from another area, you would be smart to do so. So now this week we're going to be talking about carpal tunnel syndrome. We're going to be talking about carpal tunnel syndrome. We're going to be talking about carpal tunnel syndrome, the traffic jam in your wrist. So Steve, can you start out? Can you do this for me? My mouth's broken. Jeez. Can you start us out with a simple explanation of what carpal tunnel syndrome is, maybe even with an analogy?
Sure. Well, it's simply a very uncomfortable condition in the palms of the hands that includes numbness, tingling, weakness, and clumsiness when you are grabbing or picking things up. And it can even wake you up at night with your hands feeling dead. So the best analogy I can come up with is kind of like a highway tunnel. The structures go through the tunnel like cars that are jammed up in a traffic jam. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, the drivers can get irritated, angry, and inflamed, and there's a higher risk of collisions and accidents.
Okay.
And also, you can get an excess of water similar to swelling in the body, and that can flood the tunnel, causing even more traffic disruption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is it called carpal tunnel?
It's because that part of your body is in the wrist area, and there are 8 bones. They're called carpal bones that make up the back of the hand and the wrist.
Okay, good. So then that makes sense why it's the carpal tunnel. So what makes it up? Why is it the tunnel, and what makes up the tunnel, and let people get a better understanding of that?
Sure. So the floor is the 8 carpal bones I just talked about, and they're on the back of your hand and wrist. So if you have your palm facing up, they're on the underside.
So if people take their hand and they lay it with the back of their hand on the desk in front of them with the palm facing up,
yes,
they'll be able to visualize this a little bit better.
That's right.
Good. So if it's laying like that, then the bones that are in the wrist that are kind of laying against the table make the back of the tunnel.
The floor.
The floor of the tunnel. Good.
Yeah. The roof is made up of a ligament that stretches sideways across the top of the tunnel.
Okay, so that goes, doesn't that stretch because you've got 2 big bones in your forearm? Doesn't that stretch between those 2 bones, that big ligament?
It actually is a little bit after that in the palm of the hand, where the palm starts.
All right, so it's not where that little crease is in your wrist, it's a little bit above that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And then there's a small space in between them that has structures including 9 muscle tendons and 1 nerve called the median nerve.
Okay.
And that nerve provides sensation to your thumb, your index finger, your middle finger, and half of your ring finger.
All right, good. So in that little thin tunnel, you've got all those tendons from the muscles and the 1 nerve.
Yeah, and the median nerve is the key structure that causes all the unpleasant symptoms.
Okay. Now, what are the most common causes of carpal tunnel syndrome? Because that's the carpal tunnel, but this is a syndrome. People don't naturally have those symptoms going on. So what actually causes this to occur?
Well, this is typically caused by activities where you're doing repetitive movements like typing on a keyboard or using a mouse at the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually when your wrist is bent either upward or downward. And what that does is it causes friction and collisions between the muscle tendons and the nerve in the tunnel, just like a traffic jam, like we talked about.
So it's like the nerves getting sideswiped by the tendon trucks that are going through the tunnel next to this smart car, which is, yeah, you wouldn't want to be in a smart car in a tunnel with a bunch of 16-wheelers. So this is, median nerve is the smart car, and the tendons are the 16-wheelers, and those are just irritating the crap out of that little smart car.
Yeah, kind of like those bumper cars we used to go on when we were kids.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So the median nerve is like a pencil-sized cord that carries thousands of nerve fibers like a cable line. And if you open a cable line, it's similar to what the inside of a nerve looks like.
Okay. That's a good explanation.
Yeah. So other things that can cause it are sleeping with your wrist bent. And this can typically cause that dead hand sensation at night that I talked about earlier.
Right.
It's also associated with pregnancy, diabetes, use of oral contraceptives, as well as many antidepressants and other psychiatric medications, including Valium and Xanax.
Yes, but of course, if carpal tunnel is all that you get as far as a side effect from taking those, it's much better than suicide or going in with a shotgun and killing your co-workers.
So there is a common link between all these things I just mentioned. Do you have any idea what that could be?
You mean the diabetes and all the other things, the psychiatric drugs, and then using a computer mouse?
Pregnancy and oral contraceptives.
Okay, so there's a common link between them. What is it?
Vitamin B6 deficiency.
Huh.
All of them can be related to a vitamin B6 deficiency or cause a vitamin B6 deficiency. So let's look at why B6 is important for the carpal tunnel.
All right, so these are all the ones that are separate from the mechanical, which is the using the mouse or the typing.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we've got mechanical, which is, using a mouse or typing or sleeping with your wristband or something like that. And then you've got all these other ones like pregnancy or a certain use of drugs or diabetes or other things. And all those other things, those are related to a B6 deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so go ahead.
So why is the B6 important for the carpal tunnel? First of all, it's important for nerve conduction. So the electrical flow through a nerve is kind of like the analogy with the car again in the tunnel. And it's like having a car that's stalled. There's no electrical current going through from the battery to the car.
Okay.
It's also important for the production of collagen, which is actually needed for tendons and ligaments. And those are important parts of the carpal tunnel.
So collagen is connective tissue. That's tissue between other tissues, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay.
So So again,
so the ligaments and the tendons, they have some collagen.
Yeah, collagen is what they're composed of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And also B6 helps with swelling in the hands. And that's typical complaints of not only carpal tunnel syndrome, but pregnancy. And the reason is that vitamin B6 is a natural diuretic, which means that it's a substance that helps the body get rid of excess fluid.
All right, good. So that is what some of the most common causes of carpal tunnel syndrome are. Is there any more?
Yeah, there are other causes and risk factors, including trauma, like falling on an outstretched hand causing a wrist fracture, and that'll swell up and possibly irritate the nerve. Rheumatoid arthritis, which is a swelling type of arthritis that can also damage the median nerve in the carpal tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And prolonged exposure to vibrations using hand tools or power tools, for example, like somebody who works as a jackhammer operator.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would make sense. And those are, well, that's a combination of both mechanical and certain types of health conditions or illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very good. Anything else?
That's it.
Good. Now, how common is this? Is it relatively rare or is it seen very commonly?
Well, according to a study published in 2013, in the general population, it's estimated it occurs in about 1 to 5% of us.
Okay.
It's 3 times more common in women than men. And in the workforce, especially in manufacturing and office clerical jobs, it's estimated somewhere between 5 to 21% of them.
All right. So those would be the people where the mechanical factors are going to be irritating that on a more frequent basis.
That's right.
Okay.
So here's some interesting stats on it. It's the most expensive upper limb musculoskeletal disorder with an estimated cost of medical care in the United States over $2 billion annually, primarily because of the surgeries performed.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's also the number 2 disorder in the United States for average work-related lost time at 27 days. Number 1 being fractures, broken bones.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's something I didn't know.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Now, what are the typical medical approaches to carpal tunnel syndrome, and do they work?
Well, there's a popular surgery for severe cases of carpal tunnel syndrome in which the ligament that forms the roof of the tunnel that we talked about earlier is actually cut to open up the space. And they feel that there's about a 75 to 90% success rate for this as far as reduction of symptoms, but not necessarily correction or cure of the problem.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's reduction of symptoms, not eradication of symptoms.
Yeah, alleviation or reduction. Exactly.
Right. Well, reduction can mean, yes, it doesn't bother me on a scale of 1 to 10 at 10. It's only a 3.5 now, but I'll have that the rest of my life.
Yeah, and sometimes the symptoms go away altogether if they're fortunate. Yeah.
Good.
And there's other medical treatments for less severe cases. Usually starts with wearing a neutral wrist splint. That's actually a really excellent therapeutic aid. And I've seen people use that, and they use it at work or to sleep with and so forth.
Okay.
Using ice, obviously, to bring the swelling down is smart, especially when it's real acute. Cortisone shots are popular, but I'm not a big fan of that, especially multiple cortisone shots, because they've been found to have ligaments deattach from bones and demineralize bones, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a great plan.
No. And other things include prescribed or over-the-counter anti-inflammatory drugs and, of course, physical therapy.
Okay. So then they have some success with some of the treatments, like using cortisone shots can cause just as bad problems or worse. But it doesn't sound like there's anything that's a standard approach from the medical doctors that's really the best way to go. But in some cases, like the surgery, you said in severe cases, it's probably that has to be done.
Right.
But that's, I'm sure, a very small percentage of the cases.
Yeah, I would try conservative approaches first before going that route.
That's correct. Now, what are some of the alternative treatments for carpal tunnel syndrome?
Well, one of my favorites is low-level laser therapy, also known as cold laser therapy, which I've used in the office with great success because it shrinks swollen nerves down, any type of tissue that's inflamed, reduces pain, accelerates healing. So it's wonderful for this. Of course, acupuncture and dry needling, which we went over in our last podcast.
That's correct.
There's some really good points for that. And again, vitamin B6. There's several studies that show about 100 milligrams twice a day works well. And most people do well with regular vitamin B6, along with the other vitamin B6 complex vitamins. But in some cases, the active form called P5P may be needed, especially in people that have liver conditions like liver disease or cirrhosis. Or people that have other real serious conditions like cardiovascular disease or cancer.
Okay, so that would be a form that would be a little bit safer for some of those people to take.
Yes.
Okay.
I found this really nice 4-step stretching exercise that you can do before or during work.
Okay.
And I'd like to just kind of explain it, and hopefully people can visualize this.
All right. Well, I'm going to close my eyes. So I'm going to be the guinea pig on this. You tell me what to do. And if I'm slapping myself in the face, you're going to regret the day. Never mind. Just go ahead and tell me what to do.
All right. Position all your fingers such that they're pointing up to the ceiling while extending your hands out in front of you for about 5 seconds.
All right. So basically, your arms are straight out. Your hands are bent up at the wrist with your fingers pointing up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now make a fist by pointing your fingers downward into your palms for another 5 seconds. Good. You got it. Okay. Now stretch your hands outward with an emphasis on relaxing your fingers again, counting to 5. I mean, you just straighten them out and flare them outward away from each other. Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah. And then finally, let your hands fall to your side and gently shake them out.
All right. So it's like you're doing 2 Hitler salutes, and then you're balling your fists up, and then you're bringing it out like you're doing a magic trick type thing. And then you bring your arms down by your sides. Okay. I got it.
Shake them out.
Yep.
Okay. Some other things are topical menthol. That's really good for pain reduction. Our office uses Cryoderm, which is similar to the other popular one called BioFreeze.
Okay.
And I saved the best for last. That's chiropractic.
Mm.
Yeah, adjusting the bones of the wrist can actually relieve pressure on the median nerve. Your median nerve actually starts at the armpit, so the entire nerve should be checked for compression.
Okay.
There is a condition called double crush syndrome where the nerve can be pinched at multiple places as well as the carpal tunnel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've even seen triple crush syndrome. Yeah, I'll give you a great example. This was like my second or third year in practice. I had a beekeeper come in and his carpal tunnel syndrome symptoms were so bad. He had to get up every morning. His hands were swollen and numb and weak, and he had to ice them. And I mean, he was on the verge of selling his business.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I checked him, his wrist was pinching the nerve at the carpal tunnel, but his elbow was out, and as well as the shoulder area where all the plexus of nerves come out of your neck. And then
What's
they
a
branch
plexus?
off. It's a whole group of nerves that come out of a certain area, and these being the neck.
Okay.
Yeah. And so after several treatments, he improved dramatically and he was able to salvage his business.
Interesting. So he was an example of a triple crush. Very good.
Yeah.
What can people do to prevent carpal tunnel syndrome or at least reduce their chance of getting it?
Ergonomics.
Okay.
You know, we can revert back to episode 5 on computer slouch and text neck.
Yeah. Ergonomics is the whole study of
Optimal positioning of furniture and workstation for production and prevention of pain at the office.
Okay. All right. Good.
So there's various postures that we went over in that episode, including the height of your keyboard, if you remember.
That's correct.
We talked about it should be level where your forearms are parallel to the floor when typing.
Yep.
And in addition to this, you should make sure your wrists are neutral when typing, as well as the mouse. So I recommend getting one of those gel pads that your wrist can rest on. They're really soft and comfortable, but they keep your wrist in a neutral position.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't want to bend it downward or upward when you're typing or are on the mouse, because bending your wrist down, your palm down, increases compression in the carpal tunnel 8 times. And bending it backwards increases compression 10 times.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So again, you can consider using a touchscreen to cut down on keyboards and mouse use, and also a stylus.
Excellent.
So some other things as far as prevention are at work, take regular breaks, whether you're working at a computer or have an industrial or manufacturing job that requires repetitive manual labor, using your wrist in like bent positions, and definitely consider another profession besides a jackhammer operator.
Yeah, that's true. Or make it a short-term profession.
That's right.
And then the other thing you mentioned before, I think it's both in the prevention and also the treatment, is those wrist splints. Because if you're treating somebody that's got carpal tunnel and you're adjusting them, or you're doing cold laser therapy, or you're doing multiple things and having them take extra B6, but they're going back and mechanically doing the same thing over and over again that's causing the problem, that's going to be an issue. But if they're wearing the splint, then that's going to protect the area while it's trying to heal.
I agree.
So that's both preventative and in the area of treatment.
Yeah, and likewise, so is B6. You just mentioned that. You know, and there's also many other conditions and diseases associated with B vitamin deficiency. So you should take a good B complex along with B6.
Excellent.
And then the final thing is get regular chiropractic checkups to make sure you don't have any nerve compression, not only in the wrist, but also in your neck, shoulder, elbow, or forearms. I mean, you can even have a quadruple crush syndrome.
That's right. We don't want that.
No.
Excellent. Now, is there anything else you'd like to say about this before we end today?
Well, carpal tunnel syndrome is typically diagnosed by a person's symptoms, positive orthopedic tests, and nerve conduction studies. But there's 3 simple home tests that anybody can do to see if they might have it.
Okay.
And so I wanted to share that with everybody.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So there's one called the reverse prayer test. And that is you put your hands in a prayer position, but then you reverse them and have your fingers going downward and the back of your hands touching each other.
All right. So it's like you're doing the M for YMCA.
Exactly. That's perfect.
Yep.
Another way of doing it is you can grab under your elbow and have your arm out in front of you with your forearm facing straight up and your fingers pointing towards the ceiling. Then turn your hand away from you, your palm away from you.
So you start with your palm facing your face, and then you rotate it so it's away from your face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then you bend your wrist down.
Okay.
Okay. And you hold that for about a minute to see if it reproduces the pain and numbness and tingling.
Okay.
That reverse prayer test, you look for the same thing. You hold it for at least a minute and look for the reproduction of symptoms.
Okay.
And then finally, the simplest test is you just hold your hands above your head for 2 minutes and you just check for symptoms.
Really?
Yeah.
I would say that would be the easiest one for most people to do.
Yeah. The war's over.
Yeah, that's it. Or field goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Extra point. Good. So those are some great tests. And so people can do those preferably at home. Mm-hmm. Or if they're going to see any other team but the Browns.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else you'd like to share today?
That's all I got.
Excellent. All right, great. That was very helpful. I think for a lot of people, it's going to be good, even if they don't have carpal tunnel, to know things that they can do to try to avoid it. And next week, we're going to be talking about flu, which is not the past tense of fly. And this time of year, a lot of people want to know about it, even though they're getting fed some information through the media about, well, you just go get your flu shot and we'll feel just wonderful. We're going to try and go into that as far as what the truth is about the flu and what things can be done about it. So that's going to be next week.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Body Chat Podcast. We both really appreciate your time and your attention. We want to provide you with interesting and informative episodes each week. And if you have a topic you'd like us to cover or any questions you'd like us to answer, send an email to us at info@bodychatpodcast.com. That's info@bodychatpodcast.com. Next week, we're going to chat about flu, not the past tense of fly. To make sure you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes, subscribe to the Body Chat Podcast now on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify. See you next week.